Hello and welcome to another pretty wet and windy Fast and Fun video here, and it's Rich. And in this week's video I'm going to take a look at my C350e and all the things I don't like about the car. But I think as part of the introduction, a really important part of this is generally I love this car as a day-to-day family car that can do it all. The C350e is a great car, but there are some things that really annoy me. And this video is going to take a look at my top 10 hates of the C350e. So the number one point for me is an old favourite with any plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and that is the range. Official figures state 19, and if you compare that to its closest rival, that was probably the BMW 330e, which had a official figure of 29, it was always well off the pace. But that 19 is overly optimistic, like any other manufacturer does, and in reality that's more likely to sit somewhere between 10 to at most 15 miles. In fact, in the worst and coldest months of the year, I've been seeing as little as 7 or 8 over the last few months. So electric range, now that's moved on now. Technology's moved on in the last 5 years, and you're now seeing PHEVs that are getting 40, 50, 60 mile ranges. Number 2 is a glitch with the way the hybrid system works. If you run the fuel really low and you start the car and the car recognises it's on really low fuel, it will automatically put the vehicle and force the vehicle into EV mode. And once that electric charge has been depleted, depending on how far you go, but if you continue to drive, once that charge gets to, well, it will force the car to go below 10%, which is normally the minimum battery threshold, all the way down to as little as 6 or 7%. Then it cuts EV power because of batteries and doesn't start the engine, and the car just coasts to a stop. Regardless of speed, regardless of what drive you're doing, I've spoke to Mercedes, there's no plausible explanation, and I think this is a failure and a fault of the C350e. The easy solution to stop this happening again is quite simply don't run the fuel as low. So the light rain has now turned into heavy rain, hence the umbrella. So on to point 3, and that's the way the car drives. So up to 8/10 the car is actually a great, comfortable, fast, rewarding drive. But once you start to near the limits and start to push it to 9 or 10/10, the car gets a little bit fidgety, it gets a little bit ragged, and there's a complete lack of any feedback through the steering. It's not what Mercedes are known for. Drive it at 8/10 and it's a great car. Push it to the limit and it just starts to lose its control. So number 4 is tyre wear, and specifically rear tyre wear. Family, day-to-day family cars, I expect 15 or even 20,000 miles on rear tyres. This has averaged about 10,000 miles only for each set of rear tyres. Now I don't know if it's the weight of the batteries under the boot of the car, or whether it's the way the car can accelerate from low speeds with all that battery power and the engine together that causes that high tyre wear. But I don't think 10,000 miles for rear tyres on expensive rubber is satisfactory. Number 5 is this. The flap for the electrical cable to go in. As you can see, your fingers get dirty opening this flap up for the cable and also trying to shut it. Okay, now that is really annoying, especially when Mercedes went to great lengths to give you a remote opening feature to save getting dirty hands for your boot, and the same for the closure, but didn't do something similar for the electrical flap. So actually your hands get dirty anyway. Number 6 is the in-car Infotainment System. You see, mine's got Apple CarPlay, which is very intuitive and very good. But this system, what you get generally comes as standard with the 350e, is incredibly difficult to use. It's very outdated, and actually it's incredibly flipping complicated to find your way around. Even now, sometimes you look at some of this system and you struggle to understand where and how to get into certain parts of the system. So I think technology's moved on. I understand that. This is probably 4 or 5 year old technology now, but I think for a new car, you just expect that bit more intuitive type of infotainment system. Staying in the car for number 7, because it's throwing it down with rain, is actually these switches. And I talked about these on my full review of the C350e video. And you may think that they look quite nice, but actually as you're driving along, certainly in the right-hand drive cars, the two that you most use tend to be this one here that puts the airflow either on the windscreen, the person or the feet, and this one for the speed of the fan for the air conditioning. As you go across, you can't feel the difference between any of the switches. It just feels like one big long switch here. And these are rocker switches. And they are absolutely terrible. And I spend more time looking down at these switches than I do driving. They need to be either separated or separate standalone switches. And ideally, the two ones that you're going to use the most really need to be over this side. Because largely, the air conditioning I don't change, it's always on. Lifting the suspension, preheat, I don't use these. Get those over the left hand side and get the two that you use most on this side. Staying inside for number 8 is this black gloss material used on the dash. It is one of these materials that marks, scratches, shows dust. You can dust it and you can see the electrostatic dust being attracted back to it. It scratches, it marks, it looks poor. I think there's far, far better materials to use for your centre dash. So if you can, avoid one with this black gloss finish. At number 9 is the Mercedes Me app. The most useless, pointless app that I currently have on my iPhone. I was told when I bought the car, download the app, create your account. It gives you all the car's details that you so desperately need, like registration, mileage, battery charge, MPG, things that when I need those, I'm generally in the car and I look at them. The charge status, very, very occasionally. I think I've used the app less than probably 10 times in the 3 years, and I think 9 of those 10 times I went into the app was to see if it had been improved. It feels like Mercedes created the app because they felt they needed to, not because there was a reason to. And then to point 10, my very final point. And it's one that, it's not really a dislike for me, but it's something that I think it's the elephant in the room that we need to talk about. And it's back to batteries, but this time it's looking at battery life and degradation. I haven't noticed any significant drop in my battery life, but my car is only just coming up to the 3-year point. I've been asked this question many times before. I've been told on several occasions that the recommendation from Mercedes is that the batteries need to be replaced in the C350e at 5 years. The cost is approximately somewhere between £5,000 to £6,000. Now I don't quantify that, I don't stand behind those numbers, that's only what I have heard and found off the internet. But if that is true or partially true, it is something that any second-hand buyer of a C350e must strongly consider, with the alternative of not changing the batteries and probably seeing a degradation in the performance of the batteries. But if you're going to do that, the argument would be, why have you bought a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle in the first place? Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give me the thumbs up. Please subscribe and stay tuned, because there'll be another video coming up very, very soon.